once again, I'm not going to do the group rules and things because they're all up on the wall. We talked about it before, and you all present groups, so you're well aware of the situations. Besides it, in this session, we're not going to be talking about anything particularly confidential or contentious. And I realise people will be coming in and out and using the tin coffee. And any of you got on call at the moment?
We've got the phone here. So.
You've got the phone. So if it goes, then you've got to go. Yeah. That's what you've got to do. That's quite understood. I don't think you need to introduce yourselves. We know who you are, and you know who everybody knows each other, which is really good. Okay. What I wanted to do was just recap, because this is the third session that we're doing, talking about, first of all, trauma-informed care, just really, really briefly, tiny little touch of it. Then I introduced that a little bit about strengths-based practice and the positive psychology and the VIA strengths. And this is today a little bit more about that positive psychology approach to using strength-based practices with clients. A bit more about tools and how to use them. So that's basically what we're going to talk about. Because the group's smaller this time, it might take a little bit less time. So you get an early mark. That's good. Okay. Does anybody remember the question, when we talked about the trauma-informed care, we started off with the question that was traditionally asked and how trauma-informed care changed that question? The original question was, what's wrong with you?
Oh,
and trauma-informed care changed the question to, yeah, that's right. Yeah. What happened to you? And positive psychology changes the question again. Strengths-based practice changes it to, what's right with you?
That's right, yeah.
Which is really nice. I like that switch very much.
Yeah.
In an article, Duckworth, Steen and Seligman, it sounds like a comedy crew, doesn't it? Anyway, they phrase that as saying, you move from what's wrong to what's strong, which is a nice way to remember it. Okay. Does anybody remember any of those principles of the trauma-informed care? Now, this is not a test. No, I don't expect you to list them off. I couldn't list them off.
Yeah.
But any of the things that we sort of talked about in that very first session, we were looking at the effects of trauma and what you're doing. Sorry?
You should have brought on notes.
Oh,
like
this is it. No, this is not supposed to be a test. Just is there anything that sort of stuck with you from that session?
The first one.
Yeah. Where we talked about the brain and the way it works, and the effect of trauma and how it actually causes physical changes in the brain.
Yeah.
And how trauma does shut down the speech centres. So people in high trauma can't talk.
Yeah, and they're kind of frozen and then they're just hyper-vigilant. You said something about it. Doesn't go like that.
Yeah, that
brain.
yeah. That's right. You've got that mental picture of the graphic where it goes straight across and it doesn't get into that loop that goes over the top to the higher brain centres.
So you don't come back down to that normal, like
reason it through.
Yeah.
The door's slammed because it's windy.
Not because there's something terrible is going to happen right now and I need to be angry because it happened.
Yeah.
Remain continually in that dramatic or critical crisis kind of thinking.
Yeah. So that was one of the basic principles there, is to promote safety. To try and reassure people in the way that's meaningful to them. They're safe here.
Yeah.
Because not being safe for them can be so pervasive and also so subtle. Because they're not safe in their own home. Especially with women you work with. They're not safe in their own home. And that's one of the things that in our culture people associate with being very much about safety. You know, safe as houses.
And might they still exhibit hyper behaviour, like they aren't quite right, and yet they may feel that they are, so what they're feeling and telling you is different from what you're seeing, because they may actually be feeling more than what they normally do, but it's still,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly the sorts of thing that happens. Now, I've already given you a handout on those, and I was wondering if, when you were working with people, did you find that thinking about that stayed with you?
Yeah.
It did.
Even though I can't remember.
Oh, you remember the graphic. You've got that process in your head,
Yeah.
and that's the main thing. I would guess probably more visual in your learning.
I think I am.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was really good that we could remember that. But I don't know if you want the second session you gave us made a huge difference with a client I had that afternoon or the next day. It was, I pinpointed her strengths.
Wow.
From what you said, and she just changed. You know, it was really good. And I told Marlene, and I said, oh, she said, oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, thanks. So it was right. It was
right.
Really, we could talk about it and remind each other. And,
excellent. And having an opportunity to have used it so quickly was probably really good too to reinforce it.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of stuff to remember when you're first introduced to those sorts of things, isn't it? There's lists of strengths and all sorts of. But the fact that you went in looking for something positive. Excellent. Okay. So that's just the. That's exactly one of the things I was going to ask you was, did it affect what you did with people? Did it affect your practice?
Yeah.
It did. Yeah. And I know you've been hearing about this for much longer.
I have, Carolyn.
So, did it affect your practice?
Not consciously, but you know,
No.
I learned by osmosis, and my feedback and my recall isn't all that good, right?
Yeah. But when you think about how you've been with people, I mean, and for you because you've been hearing about it for longer, do you think that overall it's had an effect?
Yes, of course, yeah. And with now the student that Alison sort of doing that, she was saying the other day, like in the afternoons, Carolyn will ask me what strengths I've observed, in you or myself or the clients, and I sort of thought about that, and I saw that you had done something on the email when we went horse riding to try to observe the strengths, in the clients while we were doing that, which I did, I found it I find it a little bit hard to actually, because I haven't so much memorised a lot of the strengths to be able to.
I don't think that
jargon
jargon
a
matters.
strength, but without necessarily putting a particular name like patience or temperance, like anything like that, which you can see.
Which may not, especially with things like it may not be a word that means anything to the client. You use their own language back to them.
And so just having that discussion there, and I thought about it, and I thought it's not all that if you don't practice really, I'm not mindful of it all the time. It's it can be quite a difficult thing to actually. You can see what a person's doing, but for me anyway, to actually be able to name sometimes what that is. And with myself, I just sort of had a brief trying to do that, and I thought, okay.
Yes, so it's a constant reminding yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of things involved there. For one thing, in our culture, Western Australian, you don't praise people. They'll get swell-headed, you might think they're a bit good. In fact, if anything, it tends to be, if you think somebody's a bit above themselves, you knock them down. So there could be an element of that sort of thing, that even though we may notice something about somebody, we don't tend to tell them. And the other thing, there's the not telling, and then there's also, it's supplying that language to people. Because one of the things you do all the time with clients is try to provide them with a vocabulary for their experience, because they don't always have the words, and that providing them the words is much what you do with little kids. You know how little kids, when they're feeling something, you see them being annoyed because they can't get the bricks to go together, you say, you're frustrated, aren't you? You're providing them with the language of, so they don't think everything's angry. they get the nuances. They realise there's frustration and there's thwarted and there's little differences that sit around anger, which are about learning to persist, whereas anger is a different sort of emotion.
And that's a really good point, Caroline, like you're saying there, that word, you know, because it's one thing to notice that somebody's being strong in a, like you're observing, but it's a little bit more nebulous because you're not actually giving them a word that they can relate to, you know, and that's, you know, it's a bit like saying, well, you've been, you know, oh, look at you, aren't you being good, but you're not naming what they're being good about. You're not saying for tidying up your room when I asked, you know, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, and good being one of those words that's very broad, pinning it down a little bit more with a strength. You were so organised and you stuck at that. You might not say to a younger person or somebody with really low literacy or poor English, you persevered, but you might say you persevered, you really stuck at it, so you give them the name and the what it means. But everybody does that with their kids when they're growing up, hopefully. Some of our clients didn't get a whole bunch of that when they were kids. They don't have a language for what they experience. They don't have a language for they don't have a rich language for their feelings, and they don't have a language for strengths. But I bet you they've got one for things that are wrong and they're negative and what's bad about the world. But there you go. So that's one of the other things I think with positive psychology is a general approach. The world is really, really ready to tell people in our client group what's wrong about them, what they lack, what they did wrong, how they stuffed something up, and what they're deficient in. And I think it's a real challenge for us to provide a counterbalance, a counterweight to that burden of negativity that's in every magazine they open, every television program they watch, every message they get from every letter from the government, every time they have to fill in a form, every time they go into a shop and somebody looks down their nose at them. Every time, the constantness of it amazes me sometimes when I'm out with a client and you as the worker there, watch the way people react to this person, and I don't know how they deal with it with the dignity that they do, because I wouldn't, you know. So respect to them, and for us to provide some measure of counterbalance, I think is important. That's why the positive psychology thing.
But generally, I mean,